je vais le mettre comme ça. Là, je peux le mettre, ouais, ici. Je vais le mettre là. Ok, donc il faut que je fasse quand même face à la caméra, c'est mieux. Bon, on va donc commencer. Merci à tous. Bonjour à toutes et tous, tous et toutes d'être venus là. L'objectif de ce rassemblement, de cette réunion, c'est d'engager une discussion sur les impacts, sur la dérégulation des OGM et sur les pollinisateurs, c'est-à-dire l'impact que pourra avoir cette dérégulation sur les pollinisateurs. Avant de commencer, ça a déjà été évoqué, mais je le rappelle, des considérations techniques importantes. Vous aurez accès, à partir du moment où le webinaire va avoir commencé, à l'interprétation français-anglais en vous connectant à votre téléphone sur le lien Zoom que vous avez reçu et qui vous a été fourni. Donc, je vais vous le faire en anglais pour que personne ne loupe ce que je viens de dire. Before starting, an important technical information. You have access to the French-English interpretation for by connecting with your mobile to Zoom link that we provide to you. Okay, for everybody? Okay.
It's working? Now it should be working? Can you confirm?
Okay for everybody? Yes. Bon, visiblement, tout le monde a trouvé la solution technique. Donc maintenant que tout le monde peut me comprendre dans ma langue maternelle, débutons cet après-midi. Donc pour commencer, je voudrais rapidement revenir sur le contexte de cet événement. En juillet dernier, donc, la Commission européenne a présenté une proposition concernant ce qu'on appelle les nouvelles techniques génomiques. Ces techniques sont, pour le dire simplement, une nouvelle façon d'obtenir des organismes génétiquement modifiés, c'est-à-dire des OGM. En tout cas, c'est ce que disait la Cour de justice européenne lors de son rendu en justice le 25 juillet 2018. Donc rapidement, pour faire simple, cette proposition propose d'exclure ces nouveaux OGM du cadre actuel de la directive qui impose une procédure d'autorisation spécifique et très contrôlée avec une analyse de risque, une analyse de traçabilité, une analyse de détection. On y reviendra probablement dans le débat, mais cette dérégulation aurait des impacts très importants pour les agriculteurs et les consommateurs, et notamment, mais ce sera évoqué, sur la réglementation sur la bio. Cette proposition est maintenant débattue chez les deux co-législateurs. Vous savez que ce genre de réglementation nécessite un avis du Conseil, qui représente donc les États membres, et de l'autre législateur, qui est le Parlement européen, au travers des députés européens, qui sont, eux, élus directement par les citoyens. Et le moins qu'on puisse dire, c'est que les débats sont, on va dire, passionnés. C'est-à-dire que les débats, mais j'ai un collègue député européen en face de moi qui pourra témoigner, sont pour le moins, oui, passionnés, c'est le mot. Donc j'espère que cette courte présentation vous aura permis de mieux comprendre l'état actuel des choses. Et je vous propose d'entrer dans le vif du sujet. Une rapide présentation scientifique du contexte. Donc, je vais désormais céder la parole à Franziska Koller, qui intervient à distance, donc via le webinaire, pour nous donner un tour d'horizon des connaissances scientifiques sur l'impact des OGM sur les pollinisateurs, hein, qui est le sujet qui nous intéresse cet après-midi. Donc, Franziska, pour la présenter rapidement, est docteur en microbiologie. Donc, je vais d'abord... Voilà, mais on commence par Franziska et après, on continuera après avec voilà, Eric ensuite, mais je présenterai les autres. Donc, je laisse la parole à Franziska qui est à distance et qui va donc intervenir via le webinaire. Franziska, c'est à vous, je vous laisse la parole.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I will share the slides now. Do you see the slides now? I think so. Okay, then I will start. Sorry. Thank you for the invitation. I will talk about the application of NGTs in Brassicacea and show some of the risks for the environment associated with these applications. At first, some facts about the biology of Brassicacea plant family. They are native to Eurasia, and the plant family consists of different domesticated as well as wild and feral plants. Domesticated plants are, for example, different mustards, cabbage, and oilseed rape. Wild plants are, for example, tailcress and pennycress. It is described that a lot of them are cross-compatible and they can therefore hybridize with each other. In the EU, we have large-scale cultivation, especially of oilseed rape, as a source of nutrients, vegetable oil, but also for biofuels and industrial compounds. For some facts about interactions and pollinators, and the example of oilseed rape, it has easily accessible and highly abundant floral resources and is therefore attractive for pollinators such as honeybees. And oilseed rape offers sticky pollen as a source of protein, lipids, vitamins, and minerals. And on the other side, it is shown that there's a significant increase of yield by insect pollination. And about the genome and breeding, some of the Brassicacea have a highly complex genome, for example, tetraploid oilseed rape or hexaploid camelina, which means that they have 4 or 6 sets of chromosomes. Therefore, they often have a lot of gene copies and duplicated genes, and this can result in restrictions for conventional breeding. For example, when a knockout is required for different gene copies. And this can be overcome by new genomic techniques, so NGTs, and lead to phenotypes which are hardly achievable by conventional breeding. I will now present our results regarding unintended effects on the plant and the environment. And we currently analyzed NGT applications in the Brassicacea family and took a closer look at the oilseed crops camelina, oilseed rape, and pennycress. And we counted 50 NGT applications in scientific publications in these 3 oilseed crops, and almost all of them would fall into the category 1 of the Commission proposal. Just some short information on the category 1 and the Commission proposal. The proposal is about plants that have been obtained using NGTs, and in the proposal, the plants are categorized according to their genomic change. And the category 1 includes plants with changes in 20 genomic regions. And at these 20 genomic regions, it is allowed that a change can include up to 20 inserted nucleotides, for example, or deletion in various size. The NGT plants of category 1 are exempted from risk assessment and monitoring. And yeah, as I already said, almost all of, or in the case of oilseed crops, almost all of the NGT applications we found in scientific literature would fall into this category 1 without further risk assessment. We analyzed these NGT applications in regard to the intended trait, and most of them had a changed oil content of fatty acid composition, which is shown here in orange. The number of NGT application is shown in the brackets. In addition, we see that a lot of applications can have positive fitness effects on the plant fitness, which is shown in green. And this means, for example, higher drought tolerance, superior growth, prolonged flowering, or more seeds. Looking at the effect that these applications can have, we identified some unintended effects and risks for the plant and the environment. And I will show now some of these unintended effects. And first, regarding the changed oil content and composition. And in Brassicacea, like oilseed rape, there's a large a high amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are called PUFAs, which is shown here on the left. And these PUFAs have numerous health benefits for humans, but also for insects. And for honeybees, for example, it is shown that PUFAs play an important role in bee health and reproduction. And pollinators receive these PUFAs via the pollen of plants, for example, of Brassicacea. But now we see that a lot of NGT applications aim to change the fatty acid composition, in particular to reduce the amount of PUFAs, because these PUFAs are undesirable for industrial purposes due to oxidative instability. But this decrease in PUFAs can negatively affect the health of pollinators, because pollinators may suffer a deficiency of these PUFAs in NGT monocultures. And for honeybees, for example, it was shown that a deficiency in PUFAs can greatly impair the brain function and lead to learning disorders. Further, it was shown that a balanced PUFA intake is important for brood development, meaning that reproduction can be endangered by PUFA deficiency. So next I will show unintended effects regarding the positive effects that these NGT applications can have on the fitness of the plant. I already mentioned in the beginning that Brassicacea are cultivated on large scale and are native to Europe. And there are a lot of vectors for the distributions of seed and pollen. For example, birds, which eat the seeds and distribute and spread seeds outside the field. And many Brassicacea have weedy characteristics, for example, long seed dormancy, meaning that they can germinate after a long period of time and under a variety of conditions. On the other sides, pollinator can distribute the pollen over long distances. And a lot of Brassicacea species can hybridize with each other. For example, oilseed rape can hybridize with mustard species and different wild species. This can result in seeds and plants with mixed and combined DNA, which is shown here on the right. Therefore, under European conditions, the cultivation of NGT oilseed Brassicacea may not be easily controlled. There are already documented cases of transgenic oilseed rape, which spread and crossed out into weedy species in, for example, Japan and Canada. The increasing fitness we see in a lot of NGT applications can further increase the risks of spread and persistence in NGT Brassicacea. So the cultivation of all of these different NGT Brassicacea may result in spontaneous crossing and therefore an uncontrolled spread of NGT traits and also in combination of NGT traits. As most of the NGT applications would fall into category 1, there further stacking and crossing is possible without further restriction and monitoring. Even this, if this results in plants that cannot be produced by conventional breeding. In addition to the traits I showed in the slides before, with unintended effects for the environment, spread and persistence, there are further NGT applications concerning traits which could also be relevant for pollinators or pollinator interaction. For example, traits with changed flowering time or traits with reduced expression of various flavonoids and traits which have an impact on hormone signaling. So with increasing complexity and intended or spontaneous combination of the traits, undesirable pleiotropic effects, so side effects, and unintended consequences become more and more difficult to predict. I want to shortly summarize up the findings I presented. Traits such as the composition of fatty acids and the number of seeds can also be influenced by conventional breeding. However, the results of using NGTs now and in future can go beyond the currently known characteristics of conventional plant breeding. The technical potential of NGTs already allows new genotypes and traits to be developed within short periods of time. In future, stacking and combining NGT-derived genotypes of various genes is expected to lead to even more extensive overall genomic change in NGT plants. In addition to the intended alteration in the phenotype and their combination, unintended changes can also occur with consequences for the plant health and interaction with the environment, such as pollinators. With increasing complexity and intended or spontaneous combination of the traits, undesirable effects become more and more difficult to predict. I would also like to emphasize that there are various unintended genetic changes that occur during the application of NGTs. Using NGTs, unintended genetic changes can occur and affect small and large sections of chromosomes and result in unintended gene products. The sites of these mutations, their genomic context, and their frequency in regard to specific sites can differ when compared to conventionally bred plants. And the biological effects can therefore be different and may cause specific risks for health and the environment. Taken together, I will give a short outlook. As the number of applications increases, it becomes increasingly difficult to reliably assess the risks for the environment, such as for pollinators and food webs. If NGT plants are introduced into agriculture, it is essential to examine both the risks of the individual plant as well as their interactions and accumulated effects. This is particularly relevant if several NGT plants are released into the same receiving environment, and regulatory provisions need to consider these aspects. Thank you for your attention.
Tout ça est réjouissant et ça renforce l'idée qu'on doit intégrer cette thématique des NGT via la problématique des pollinisateurs, puisque pour assister au débat, souvent il est question d'utiliser les NGT pour faciliter l'atteinte de la souveraineté alimentaire. Il faudra quand même se poser la question duquel des deux est le plus important pour atteindre la souveraineté alimentaire, entre les NGT ou les pollinisateurs. Il faudra peut-être s'interroger un jour sur cette question-là, et je pense que le sujet est essentiel. Quand on parle de ces sujets-là, je pense qu'il est important de donner la parole aux jeunes, et donc je vais leur laisser la place, la possibilité de d'intervenir, puisque sur les sujets de l'environnement, du climat, de la biodiversité, c'est des sujets qui pour eux sont plutôt anxiogènes. Et donc, je pense qu'il est fondamental de savoir se tourner vers cette jeune génération, de savoir parler avec eux de leur avenir et d'écouter la voix des générations futures. C'est la raison pour laquelle aujourd'hui, on va donner la parole à Sandrine Denaud, qui fait partie du Global Youth Biodiversity Network et qui donc une organisation reconnue et soutenue par la Convention sur la diversité biologique. Et donc, Sandrine, vous travaillez actuellement pour Pollinis, pour la protection des pollinisateurs, c'est ça, si je ne me trompe pas. Et donc, je me permets de vous laisser la parole pour 10 minutes et nous présenter votre position. Merci beaucoup, Sandrine.
Merci. Donc, bonjour à tous. J'aimerais commencer par remercier déjà le comité d'organisation qui me donne aujourd'hui l'opportunité de discuter un peu des préoccupations de la jeunesse et également des solutions pour assurer un avenir qui soit sain, durable et souhaitable pour nous, les générations futures. Donc, comme discuté ce matin, on fait face aujourd'hui à un déclin qui est massif et assez impressionnant des pollinisateurs dans le monde. Et on sait que cette extinction des pollinisateurs est intimement liée au système agricole qui nécessite, par exemple, l'utilisation massive de produits pesticides, mais également, de manière indirecte, favorise la perte de biodiversité et de ressources florales qui sont indispensables pour la santé des pollinisateurs et des abeilles. Donc, je ne vais pas rappeler ici l'importance des pollinisateurs pour notre production alimentaire et de manière générale pour les écosystèmes vivants. Cela a déjà été amplement mentionné ce matin. On est finalement face aujourd'hui à une situation où on doit rapidement transitionner vers un système agricole qui soit durable et qui prenne en compte la santé des écosystèmes, des pollinisateurs et in fine des intérêts des générations futures. Il semble aujourd'hui évident que ces solutions passent par des approches protectrices de la biodiversité et surtout des approches qui soient beaucoup plus prudentes que ce qui a été fait précédemment, concernant notamment les conséquences sur le long terme. Une des solutions proposées aujourd'hui par la Commission européenne consiste à introduire dans le milieu agricole des nouvelles variétés de plantes génétiquement modifiées, appelées NGT pour New Genomic Techniques, et qui sont des nouveaux OGM, mais non transgéniques, et dont l'objectif annoncé est de répondre au mieux à des besoins très spécifiques de l'homme. Donc, si ces variétés de plantes nouveaux OGM ou NGT sont autorisées en milieu agricole, elles seront directement en contact avec les écosystèmes, et notamment en contact direct avec les pollinisateurs. Une fois que ces plantes circuleront, il n'y aura pas de retour en arrière possible. Donc, les décideurs doivent garder à l'esprit que leur choix impactera l'ensemble des générations à venir. Donc, beaucoup de promesses sont annoncées quant au rôle, quant à la finalité des NGT pour l'agriculture. On parle par exemple de certaines applications qui peuvent, de prime abord, sembler prometteuses, telles que des plantes capables de résister par elles-mêmes à des virus, ou des plantes capables de soutenir le stress hydrique, ou encore de s'adapter au réchauffement climatique. En parallèle, on retrouve également des applications dont on peut très clairement se passer et qui répondent plus à des logiques de vente, telles que la création de fruits qui ne brunissent pas, par exemple. Enfin, et surtout, on retrouve des applications qui restent pour le coup très controversées, comme la formation de plantes qui sont capables de résister aux herbicides. Je pense qu'ici, il faut faire attention à ne pas être naïf. On sait que, en fonction de l'application souhaitée, la facilité de réalisation n'est pas la même. On sait par exemple qu'il est relativement simple de faire une plante tolérante aux herbicides, tandis qu'il est beaucoup plus complexe de faire une plante qui va s'adapter au réchauffement climatique ou au stress hydrique, et ce même avec des techniques aussi pointues que CRISPR-Cas9. Donc, au vu de l'étendue des possibilités existantes concernant la modification du vivant, on peut légitimement se poser plusieurs questions quant à la réalité derrière les discours. Ce qui compte réellement et qui n'est pas particulièrement adressé par la Commission européenne, in fine, ce sont les questions suivantes. Quelles plantes vont concrètement atterrir dans nos agricultures? Quelles seront leurs fonctions concrètes? Qui décide de ce qui est produit ou de ce qui n'est pas produit? Et sur quels critères? Et surtout, quelles protections mettons-nous en place pour ne pas répéter les erreurs du passé et s'assurer en amont, cette fois-ci, que l'on ne favorise pas l'avantage court terme au détriment de potentielles conséquences sur le long terme? Enfin, faisons-nous des analyses d'impact, par exemple, sur les pollinisateurs qui seront en contact direct avec ces plantes et qui sont déjà fortement menacés par le système agricole. Donc, la Commission européenne propose aujourd'hui de déréguler complètement une grande partie des plantes NGT qui deviendraient légalement équivalentes aux plantes conventionnelles avec toutes les conséquences qui vont avec. La Commission se base pour cela sur des critères qui sont apparemment scientifiquement discutables et controversés au sein de la communauté scientifique et que je ne vais pas détailler ici. Ce qu'il faut retenir, c'est que malgré l'absence de recul que l'on peut avoir sur beaucoup de ces nouvelles plantes, la Commission européenne souhaite laisser le champ libre aux industries quant aux applications des NGT. Donc, aucune précaution, aucun garde-fou n'est mis en place pour contrôler l'utilisation de ces plantes et de s'assurer d'une absence de risque. Il semble que c'est plutôt le contraire, puisque, d'après les critères de la Commission, les plantes génétiquement modifiées ne seront pas triées en fonction de leurs bénéfices long terme ou de l'intérêt commun. Mais ce choix sera visiblement donné aux industries. Il paraît évident que dans ce contexte, les intérêts économiques et privés, donc des critères de profit et de rentabilité, vont jouer un rôle prépondérant dans la décision finale. C'est pourtant le rôle des politiques d'encadrer et de garantir que les critères de durabilité seront systématiquement pris en compte. Au-delà du choix des plantes et de leur finalité, la Commission souhaite également retirer toute analyse des risques, que ce soit pour l'humain ou les écosystèmes. Et puis encore, il n'y aura pas de traçabilité possible, ce qui implique entre autres qu'il sera plus difficile de réaliser des études a posteriori sur de potentiels effets néfastes. L'ensemble de ces propositions peut paraître, selon nous, un peu prématuré et inquiétant, notamment lorsque l'on sait qu'une fois dans la nature, il est presque impossible de revenir en arrière. Donc, les organismes vivants ne sont pas contrôlables, ils se disséminent dans la nature et leurs gènes peuvent également se propager au sein de plantes sexuellement compatibles. Il ne faut pas oublier que la dérégulation des NGT est un acte irréversible. Si l'on découvre le moins de problèmes associés, ce sont les générations futures qui en paieront le prix, et ce sans possibilité de retour en arrière. Dans ces conditions, le principe de précaution s'impose. On a déjà des premières études d'impact présentées par Franziska et qui montrent un premier aperçu de conséquences néfastes qu'il pourrait y avoir sur les pollinisateurs et la biodiversité. Donc, chaque génération a un devoir moral de léguer à la suivante un monde suffisamment préservé pour assurer les conditions de sa survie. Et mettre potentiellement en danger les écosystèmes, c'est une trahison de cette promesse faite de préserver également les intérêts des générations futures. C'est pourquoi il est si important que les responsables politiques prennent acte de l'importance de cette dérégulation qu'ils sont en train de négocier et prennent des mesures fortes afin que les nouveaux OGM soient correctement encadrés. C'est d'autant plus primordial de se poser ces questions maintenant que les possibilités d'utilisation des techniques de modification du code génétique sont infinies et ouvrent des perspectives indénombrables. Nous serons-nous proposés demain, par exemple, de modifier également, non pas les plantes, mais les pollinisateurs eux-mêmes. On sait aujourd'hui qu'il est techniquement possible de modifier directement le génome de l'abeille, ainsi que les micro-organismes présents dans leur microbiote, afin de modifier les capacités des abeilles ou leur interaction avec l'environnement. On ne peut pas exclure que la question de la réglementation de ces technologies se posera dans le futur sur d'autres types d'organismes que les plantes. Et que fera l'Europe face à l'enjeu de ces modifications et surtout où l'Europe posera ses propres limites. Donc, ce sont des questions fondamentales qui doivent faire l'objet d'un débat public. Et il s'agit notamment d'un débat qui est initialement éthique sur les relations entre l'homme et le vivant et sur les limites que l'on pose à la manipulation génétique des organismes. Il est d'ailleurs indispensable d'associer les citoyens à ce débat et d'écouter leur opinion, car les choix d'aujourd'hui détermineront l'ensemble des générations à venir, le futur. Merci beaucoup.
Merci Sandrine. Voilà, l'idée c'est qu'on puisse ouvrir un débat ensuite, donc je vous invite à prendre place sur le fauteuil. J'ai juste une proposition à vous faire. Franziska ne peut pas rester plus longtemps. C'est la scientifique qui s'est exprimée juste avant, qui nous a donné des éléments éclairants sur la menace que pourraient représenter les NGT sur les pollinisateurs. Donc avant qu'elle s'en aille, je ne voudrais pas qu'il puisse, voilà, merci, qu'il puisse y avoir des questions auxquelles elle aurait pu répondre et qu'on ne lui aurait pas posées. Donc je vous pose la question de savoir si quelqu'un a une question particulière à proposer à Franziska avant qu'elle nous quitte et à laquelle elle pourrait éventuellement répondre. Je vous laisse vous manifester si vous souhaitez poser une question à Franziska avant qu'elle nous quitte. Visiblement, elle a été très claire et particulière. Ah, voilà. Et maintenant, vous se taire à tout jamais.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. And I'll switch to English now. Not a question, but a remark. And I'm Klaus from the DG SANTE from the European Commission, who presented a proposal to the Council and the Parliament. You said, Ms. Koller, that category 1 would be exempt from risk assessment and monitoring. That is not entirely correct. The proposal foresees monitoring for all categories of NGT plants to be done in looking at all the effects that you described also. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's not entirely correct to say that they're exempt from monitoring.
Franziska, est-ce que vous voulez apporter une réponse?
Maybe this is more a topic for the discussion afterwards.
Reste avec nous. J'avais cru comprendre qu'elle partait. Et... représentants des différentes institutions, je vous l'ai dit, on est entré dans une phase où toutes les institutions aujourd'hui se penchent sur cette question et donc elles sont impliquées sur la réforme dont je parlais en introduction. Et d'ailleurs, je note avec beaucoup d'intérêt que ce panel est le seul de la semaine, puisque toute la semaine est consacrée à ce sujet-là, où la Commission et le Conseil sont représentés ensemble. C'est dire l'importance du sujet, et le Parlement, bien sûr. Et bien sûr, le Parlement. Une preuve de l'importance du sujet, j'imagine, puisque pour les autres sujets, la mobilisation était moins marquée, c'est le moins qu'on puisse dire. Donc, je vais d'abord laisser la parole à Klaus Berend, qui est donc le chef d'unité au sein de la DG Santé, mais qui a déjà pris la parole, et donc qui est en charge de la mise en œuvre des législations sur les pesticides, les biocides. Et donc, je lui propose la parole pour 5 minutes pour qu'il nous parle des propositions de la Commission et peut-être réagir aux présentations, mais il l'a déjà fait. Donc, je lui cède le micro pour 5 minutes et il viendra s'installer voilà, dans le fauteuil qui est lui réservé juste après.
see the nouveau. So I'll switch again to English, as in the end, it's a bit easier for me to speak than in French. The Commission proposal related to plants obtained by certain NGTs has indeed the ambition to provide a framework with a proportionate regulatory oversight for plants obtained by these technologies, or by certain of these technologies, not by all, and to adapt the requirements to the potential risks that they may pose for either health or the environment. What you all know is that the opinions on this particular topic are very divergent, are very polarized. We have seen that throughout the entire process of the preparation of the proposal, including the impact assessment and including also a public consultation. The second speaker referred to the need to listen to the public, which we have done. And the majority of the submissions that we got via the public consultation were actually in favor of proposing rules that are more adapted to plants obtained by certain NGTs than the current regulatory framework, which is the GMO legislation as it stands. We also got statements from various organizations, including also from young farmers. SEJA, the Young Farmers Organization, very much in favor of creating a more enabling framework for plants from these technologies. The Commission has looked very much into what is in the pipeline of research, just as the first speaker has done, who focused on one particular crop type. And the JRC, the Joint Research Center from the Commission, has indeed found that there is a lot of research and development going on for many different plant varieties, many more than was the case for the classical GMO technology, and also many different traits. Herbicide tolerance has been mentioned as something that is not desirable, that is something that the Commission also shares as an opinion. But we didn't put specific rules on herbicide tolerance plants in the proposal, because this is a trait, herbicide tolerance, that can be obtained also by classical and conventional breeding. There are more than 400 varieties of plants that are herbicide tolerant that have been generated with conventional breeding. So instead of putting something in the NGT proposal, we put rules related to that into the other proposal that was adopted on the same day on plant reproductive material, to cover all plants that has this trait, and not only those obtained by NGTs, but also those by conventional breeding. Among the beneficial traits that can be generated with NGTs are fitness, and that was also mentioned in the first keynote speech today. And in particular, there's potential to create plants that are more resistant to pests, be it fungi or insects, and therefore they can lead to a reduced use of pesticides. And we had the JRC doing specific case studies on such examples. For example, a potato that is already in field trial in the Netherlands that is resistant to late blight, but also an apple variety that is more resistant to scab. And the JRC found that there is a potential to reducing pesticide use by 50 to 80% for the potato, and up to 50% for the apple. And I think we all know that the use of pesticides is one of the factors that is particularly detrimental also to pollinators and insects more general. So varieties that require less pesticides will obviously have the potential to be beneficial for pollinators. And in this study from the JRC, the research to generate such varieties that are resistant to biotic stress, so to pests, is the second most frequent, after the most frequent one, which is a modified composition. And the first presentation today also commented on that already. So it is really the second most of the desired traits via these genetic modifications. So, Mr. Chairman, to conclude, maybe just to say that we have also based our proposal, in particular this differentiation between category 1 and category 2, on the work of EFSA and the advice we got from EFSA. We know that there are opinions who don't agree with the EFSA conclusion that certain plants are comparable to those that can also be obtained by conventional breeding or by natural crossing. And we know that there are also opinions who think that there are higher risks of unintended genetic modifications, but the EFSA opinions in this regard are pretty clear. They have a different view. They say the likelihood of unintended modifications are lower. And indeed, certain of the modifications that can be obtained by NGTs can also be obtained by conventional breeding or natural crossing. And that's the background for our proposal. And to conclude, the Commission has proposed that there will be monitoring and extensive monitoring of all the varieties that are actually bred with NGTs and that will arrive on the market. And that is a process, even though it's faster than conventional breeding, it's not happening from one day to the other, because all these plants are, or most of them on the most cultivated crops are also subject to the PRM legislation, the Plant Reproductive Materials legislation. So they have to go through the testing and through this added the value for cultivation and use. So that will also kick in. Nevertheless, we have proposed extensive monitoring, and it's now up to the Council and the Parliament. Mr. Chairman, and you are involved in these discussions, I know, to see what you make out of the proposals from the Commission before they are adopted. Thank you.
Je vais trouver un autre micro, du coup je vous laisserai transmettre le micro à l'intervenant d'après. Bien sûr, à titre personnel, j'aurais plein de questions, mais je ne suis pas là pour ça, mais à la fois sur le fond et sur la forme. Sur le fond, sur peut-être le manque d'approche globale, mais je ne vais pas entrer dans le débat. Et sur la forme, est-ce que c'est les jeunes agriculteurs qui décident de l'avenir de tous les jeunes? C'est une autre question. Et donc, voilà, c'est pour faire écho aux propos de Sandrine juste avant. Je n'irai pas plus loin, on aura l'occasion d'un débat. On a parlé des co-législateurs, et donc maintenant, je vais laisser la parole au Conseil et à la présidence espagnole, hein, puisque c'est la présidence espagnole encore jusqu'à la fin du mois de décembre. Et donc, c'est probablement elle qui va animer les débats pour le Conseil sur cette réglementation. Et donc, je vais passer la parole à monsieur Miguel Martín Esteban, qui est le conseiller agriculture à la représentation permanente de l'Espagne auprès de l'Union européenne. Et donc, je vous laisse, monsieur Martín, 5 minutes pour nous présenter la position du Conseil, peut-être la position de l'Espagne aussi, c'est peut-être un peu lié. Voilà, donc je vous laisse 5 minutes, je vous laisse prendre le micro et à vous, je vous laisse la parole.
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation et pour l'occasion de participer dans... Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting the... Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for inviting the Ministry of Agriculture and the Spanish Permanent Representation on behalf of the Presidency of the Council of the European Union to participate in this debate within the framework of the European Pollinator Week. First of all, I'd like to excuse the participation of our General Director, Esperanza Llana, who is expected to attend to this workshop due to serious personal reasons. Neither our expert participating in the innovation and new genomic techniques working party, because they are all yesterday and today they are attending a working party session on this specific matter in the Council, and they are trying to coordinate the position of all the delegation in order to reach a common position of the Council and to try to reach a general agreement during this presidency. So from my position as a councillor and my experience in the participation in some of the meetings of this working group, I try to do my best to explain our position on this matter. And I think it can help all of us to have a constructive dialogue and try to find out solutions to the current challenges. And the most important thing is to find solutions to protect pollinators population in the EU, making more effective use of the current tools and policies in the European Union. First of all, I like to highlight the importance of the apiculture sector and the beekeeping in our country, and also for the agriculture. And therefore, the commitment of the Ministry of Agriculture to maintain these activities, which are key to maintain the rural environmental and, of course, guarantee the food security as one of the main objectives of the agriculture. Apiculture is very important for us in Spain. We are the main producer in the EU, and we are very committed to defending the multifunctional beekeeping sector based on his professional aptitude. The census of hives in Spain are around 3 million hives, and we have more than 36,000 beekeepers. So this is a very professional sector in Spain, and is our high priority to protect also apiculture and agriculture. We totally agree that pollinators are essential for the conservation of the biodiversity, as well as for the economy, and in particular for agriculture and for food production. In today's discussion, we address the relationship of pollinators with a new legislative initiative, which is within the Farm to Fork strategy, and which we think that could contribute to give an innovative tools to help to achieve the objectives of the Green Deal. In the recitals of this new proposal, it's mentioned that the legal framework for NGT plants should share the objectives of the European Union legislation to ensure high level of protection of human and animal health, and also the environment and the good functioning of the internal market. This legal framework should enable to develop and place it on the market plants and their products used for food or feed. And this contributes also to the innovation and the sustainability objectives of the European Green Deal. I like to begin my short explanation in a try to explain in a very simple way something that probably all of us know, but it's important to have a clear idea of what are we talking about. When we know more about this initiative, we have more technical information, it's easier to have an opinion and to take decisions. NGTs are a set of methods used to modify the genetic material of living organisms with great precision. It's mentioned before in the previous speech. These techniques allow us to change, eliminate, or add specific genes within an organism, always within the same species, as in the traditional breeding and selection method, obtaining organisms with improved traits. For example, these precision genetic techniques, as mentioned other colleagues before, can be used to improve the nutritional content of plants or obtain new crops that are more resistant to plant diseases or drought. New genomic techniques are genetic tools that are different from conventional ones, such as the traditional crossbreeding, and different from other genetic modification tools. We can be clear an idea that the new genomic organisms are not transgenic. We are not talking to insert genes from other species, animal or plant, into one specific species. We are talking of a different organism. So it's very important to take this in mind, because it's a new tool that improves the genetic method to have new varieties of plants. This application in plant breeding can result in products and varieties that are not we cannot distinguish from those products that occur in nature and obtained through conventional breeding techniques. So the legislative text established two main categories. The category 1, that are plants that could be also occur naturally or can be produced by conventional breeding techniques. This category should be treated in the same way as plants that have been occurred naturally or have been produced by conventional breeding techniques, given that they are equivalent and their risks are comparable. In order to ensure a legal certainty, this regulation should be set out the criteria to distinguish this or to categorize these NGT plants are equivalent to the naturally occurring or conventionally breeding plants. Klaus mentioned that they are subject to monitoring and under an authorization process by member states before the commercialization of plants or the products. All NGT plants that are not category 1 and their product should be remain subject to the requirement of the GMO regulation. So I think it's a key question that we should distinguish between category 1 that are similar to conventional plants and category 2 that are considered as a GMO organism. So it's important for us, this initiative is important as it is considered as a priority during the Spanish presidency. And we consider that it can help to the innovation and technology at European level, not only for the benefits for agriculture, but also for the benefits for research. So, to finalize, because we are short of time, from this approach of the Spanish presidency, we consider necessary to improve the survival capacity of hives, facilitating their coexistence with the agricultural environment, and addition for the honey production activity as a fundamental activity in the pollination of crops. Spain considers that moving forward within the NGT proposal represents an opportunity and a new tool to improve the coexistence of agriculture and beekeeping, improving the capacity of the beekeeping sector to offer pollination services in a manner compatible with honey production in a good sanitary and economic production. So we consider that it's important to ensure the food security. That is a very big issue that in all the last council meeting are discussed about the food security problem, and also the competitivity of the agriculture sectors in the European Union.
Non, mais je vais prendre celui-ci. Merci, Monsieur Martín. Merci de nous éclairer sur la position du Conseil. Et j'imagine que c'est la même que celle de l'Espagne, que l'Espagne se reconnaît dans cette position-là. Pour finir, puisqu'on a dit qu'on était dans la période d'échange et de stabilisation de cette réglementation, je vais laisser la parole à mon collègue, Juozas Olekas, qui est aussi député européen et avec qui je travaille, puisqu'on est tous les deux ce qu'on appelle rapporteurs fictifs sur cette réglementation. Lui pour les sociodémocrates, moi pour les écologistes. Et donc, Juozas, tu disposes de 5 minutes pour expliquer la position des sociodémocrates sur cette réglementation et donc nous donner un peu la position de ton groupe politique.
Thank you very much for introduction and invitation to participate in this session also. And for me as a medical doctor and beekeeper, also it's very interesting how we can support the farmers. Because we all this morning discussed about how we should change the situation in the current situation, because we use too much pesticide, we use too much chemicals, and it kills the bees and other pollinators. And from my point of view, I think we need to support to achieve the farmers to achieve the goals of Green Deal, Farm to Fork, and biodiversity strategies. And we have to make sure that bees and other pollinators that are essential to the functioning of agriculture are protected from harmful pesticides and chemicals, and there's enough land for biodiversity and improvement of ecosystems that the food our citizens eat is safe. At the same time, we have to ensure sustainable functioning of the food chain and strengthening the European food security and sovereignty, as well as enable farmers, including small and medium and young farmers, to keep the farms economically viable, as that essential for the vitality of the countryside. And in this situation, we have the proposal from the Commission and then from Council, the new genomic techniques for plant breeding. Although my personally, I hesitate to name the gene editing technology as new, and would like to consider it very appropriate for the 21st century, where it may become the conventional practice. And is an instrument that can help us achieve get the higher yields, with less input, using less land, less chemicals, less water, and produce plants that are more resistant to the effect of climate change, disease, and maybe pests. And from my knowledge, the European Food Safety Authority has found that NGTs do not generate specific dangers different to those from the conventional breeding methods, and of target mutation potentially introduced by targeted mutagenesis techniques of the same type as even less than those mutation in conventional breeding. Because in conventional breeding, we also use chemicals, we also use radiation. This is also creates some question. As a medical doctor, as I said, by profession, I have always based my decision on scientific knowledge. And so I do agree with a lot of what is being proposed by the Commission and by our envy rapporteur in the European Parliament. As there broad scientific consensus that the plants that would be considered category 1 NGTs are as safe as those bred with the so-called conventional breeding method, and that it is not possible to distinguish them. We should consider giving organic farmers also a choice, whether or not to use these varieties. If the plants are deemed equivalent, then there should also be equivalency in the use and evaluation. All in all, I am in favor of making sure our citizens get healthy and affordable food. Our scientists have equal opportunities for the research, as do the counterparts in third countries. And our European farmers have all the instruments they need to achieve the ambitious and necessary goals for climate, environment, and ecosystem, while maintaining the economic viability of their farms and ensuring food security in these uncertain times, as well as healthy environment for bees and other pollinators with less chemical, pesticide, and more space. I have some meetings in my country, in Lithuania, with young scientists, with young farmers, and we discuss this issue. Yes, we have some kind of demonization when we're talking about GMO. We use a lot of soya, GMO soya from the South America. We're transporting them to the European recipe. And but this is our determination. But we agree with our scientists, but not. I think a lot of European scientists showing that they are ready to improve the breeding techniques with some new technologies. And this is our decision at the end, how we accept this new scientific achievement. Yes, it creates some confusion for many of us, but at the end, our decision is based on the scientific achievement. And this is, for me, it shows that we can go the step forward regarding the Commission proposal. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Juozas. Je vous disais tout à l'heure que les débats pouvaient être passionnés. Voilà, moi, je suis un scientifique, je suis ancien chercheur, je travaillais sur les sujets pas du tout polémiques que sont le clonage et les OGM, et je suis à peu près pas d'accord sur tout ce qui vient d'être dit. Donc, ça vous donne une idée des débats qu'on peut avoir lorsqu'on échange en réunion de Shadow, mais c'est aussi ça la démocratie. En tout cas, merci Juozas d'avoir apporté ces éclairages. Et donc, je vais, pour terminer ce tour de parole, parce qu'il est important effectivement que le monde agricole qui est concerné puisse s'exprimer sur ces questions-là. Et je regrette d'ailleurs trop souvent qu'on resserre le débat autour exclusivement du monde agricole pour débattre de ces sujets-là, alors qu'on a affaire à un vrai débat de société. Et donc, il a été souhaité que, pour terminer ce tour de parole, puisse s'exprimer aussi la société civile, qui n'est peut-être pas toujours alignée sur la position du monde agricole. Et pour ce faire, il a été demandé donc, à 2 personnes de venir compléter ce panel hein, qui s'exprime aujourd'hui. Et la première est une personne qui... je suis paysan bio aussi, donc je suis intéressé d'écouter Eric, qui est le directeur adjoint d'IFOAM, qui donc est le réseau européen des producteurs bio et qui va peut-être exprimer, j'imagine pas peut-être d'ailleurs, qui va exprimer la position qui est ce réseau européen des producteurs bio sur cette évolution de la réglementation et peut-être focaliser sur la thématique des pollinisateurs qui sont indispensables pour réussir en agriculture biologique. Hein. Là, je l'ai dit, je suis paysan bio et je connais le poids et le rôle que jouent les pollinisateurs dans cette production-là. Et donc, Eric, je te laisse 5 minutes pour nous éclairer sur la position des agriculteurs bio sur cette réglementation et peut-être le focus sur les pollinisateurs. Tu peux donner le micro à Eric. Voilà, parfait.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your invitation. And I will also speak in English out of habit. So indeed, I represent the organic farming sector. We have 200 members across Europe. And I want to be very clear. The organic movement has discussed for the last years, its position on these novel genomic techniques. And the vast majority of organic farmers and operators have taken a very clear position that the use of such NGTs is not compatible with the principles of organic farming, and that NGTs should clearly be banned from organic production. There are several reasons for that. I will try to be short. The first of all is that the organic movement believes in the precautionary principle. I don't think the organic movement was proven wrong when it decided 30 years ago that GMOs out of transgenesis should be banned from organic production when we see what we have today, herbicide tolerant crop and BT maize. Basically, I think, I hear sometimes that the organic movement is called as unscientific or blocking progress or innovation. But when it refused to use synthetic pesticides like neonicotinoids, I remind you that 25 years ago, when neonicotinoids were authorized, they were deemed safe, including by EU Scientific Committee at the time. It took more than 20 years for the scientific studies to be published before we realize what how horrendous the impact was on pollinators of neonicotinoids. And I'm glad that at least organic farmers have refused to use them because they believed at the time that, it's not because science tells you one day that something is safe, but we will know in 20 years that it was really safe. And unfortunately, the negative impact are only visible or documented scientifically decades afterwards. And this is why the precautionary principle is so important in the European Union. And this is part of a reason why the organic movement believes that NGTs should not be used in organic production. The second issue, of course, is the issue of patents, intellectual property, and who controls these organisms and this innovation. I will make a long story short. The organic movement believes in participatory plant breeding and believes that breeding is just one element of a farming system, and that the breeding goals should be in line with the needs of farmers. We know that NGTs and GMOs are associated to patents and are a tool for big companies or patents holder to control seeds, which are the first step of a production chain, and to control ultimately food production as well. And the last reason why the organic movement believes that NGTs should not be used in organic, and generally speaking are not really a solution, is because ecosystems are complex, agroecosystems are complex. Organic farming is precisely about trying to understand and trying to embrace this complexity. It's not the variety that you grow that makes your farming system sustainable. It's the state of your soil. It's the quality of the water that you use as well. It's all the interactions in a farming system. So I've heard you mentioning, resistant to scab in apple, for example. Organic plant breeders have already come up with, solutions in breeding to try and work on resistance, but they know that monogenic resistance to scab is broken after a few generations. In the same way that the corn borer becomes resistant to the toxins produced by the BT maize, which is grown in Spain, after a few generations. So that's why the organic approach to plant healthcare is to use a combination of different techniques. You need to have crop rotations and healthy soils. You need to rely on functional biodiversity, including pollinators. Sometimes you use natural substances as pesticides as a complement, like baking soda or quatsins or copper, for that matter, as well. And none of this solution by itself will protect you from pests or diseases, but by combining all these different strategies, you, the farmer, hopefully gets a manageable level of infestation by pests and diseases without harming biodiversity to the same extent as synthetic pesticides. So we do not believe that NGTs will provide long-term solution for sustainability, even if we get new crops which produce their own insecticides as well, because we are concerned that this resistance will be broken off once again after a few generations. And we believe that NGTs are a diversion from the real solution that we already have, which are based on the principle of agroecology as well. So for all these reasons, it's very important for the organic movement that we can give to people who are ready to pay more to buy organic products, the guarantee that no NGTs are used in the organic production process. And I must say that the Commission's proposal in this respect, even though we disagree with many of its aspects and its reasoning, tries to achieve a kind of balance, because we very much welcome the fact that the Commission's proposal acknowledges that the organic movement does not want to use NGTs and acknowledges that NGTs are banned from organic production. That's a positive point in this proposal, and provides a certain level of transparency by including a public register on the use of NGTs in breeding and labeling of the seed lot, whether a seed has been developed through NGTs or not. And we believe that it's a good basis for this discussion, and that's a point that should be defended in the co-decision process. But of course, because of a problem of contamination, we count on the Parliament and on the Council to provide traceability all along the production chain, not only at the seed level, because also processors need to be able to know where NGTs are used or not. We also believe that consumers should keep the right to know whether the food they buy has been produced with NGTs or not. And we believe that member states should also have a legal basis to take coexistence measures to restrict the cultivation of NGTs in certain areas, like seed production areas, or in areas where beekeeping is important, precisely if we want to protect as well beekeeping production, because without that, there will be contamination. That's very clear. And I'm very much like the presentation from Franziska Koller about oilseed rape and brassicae. I mean, we know we have wild relatives of oilseed rape in Europe. Ravenel is called in French. I have no idea how it is called in English. And we know that contamination has already happened, even though we don't have cultivation of GM oilseed rape in Europe. Still, we can find herbicide-tolerant oilseed rape because of a transport, because of imports of oilseed rape from Canada for biofruit production, for example. You know, there are spills, you know, when you have a truck of oilseed rape. So we know that contamination will happen as well. And my last word would be about the new traits which are expected from NGT production. I mean, we know that GMOs, it's only herbicide tolerance, like Roundup Ready crops, so more use of glyphosate, BT maize, like it is grown in Spain, producing a BT toxin. And we hear that with NGTs, we'll have new traits being available. And according to the German Environment Agency, I think they evaluated that, well, first of all, 94% of NGT in the pipeline will fall into category 1, but that 30% of the traits will relate to change of composition in the plants. And that's what we hear in the industry will do as well, you know. NGTs that will bring allegedly benefits to consumers, like the GABA tomato, which is apparently commercialized in Japan, which contains a substance called GABA, which is supposed to lower blood pressure. What's going to happen when we grow this in the environment in Europe? What's going to be the impact on insects, on pollinators that feed on this plant if we have, without any risk assessment, or in the worst case, without traceability, if the parliament decides to take this away as well, cultivation of such pharmaceutical crops, which produce substances which are usually not in the crops which are grown in the open environment. So we believe that this is especially worrying, and that at least there should be an examination of the impact of this on insects and on pollinators as well. So for all these reasons, we believe that it's important, before deregulating or making a lighter legal framework, we believe that it's important to maintain traceability information and the possibility for all farmers who do not want to use NGTs to do so as well. So we count on the Council and Parliament to reach this balance as well.
Merci Eric. Merci Eric. Pour compléter donc la prise de parole de ce qu'on appelle la société civile, je vais donner la parole à Madame Noa Simón Delso, c'est comme ça qu'on dit, qui elle est directrice scientifique de BeeLife, qui peut nous proposer également une réaction de 5 minutes sur ce débat autour des NGT et des pollinisateurs. Merci, 5 minutes s'il vous plaît.
Thank you very much, Mr. Biteau, and thank you for giving me the floor. So we actually, from BeeLife, we see this proposal of deregulation, let's say, of these scientific organisms a little bit of concern. Because as always, let's say, the pollinators, the bees and the beekeepers, we suffer the collateral damages of the system. So when the system doesn't work, we actually suffer from that. And nobody takes into consideration this situation. So this morning, I don't know if you had the chance to follow, but we had Dr. Johan Rockström to talk about the planet boundaries. Let's say we have already surpassed the capacity of the planet of dealing with synthetic innovations and synthetic organisms. And we certainly think that we think twice, at least, about how we are going to deal here. Let's say, it's not only us, BeeLife, that consider these genetic techniques or the new GMOs, or however you want to call it, dangerous for pollinators. It's even the European Court of Auditors and the IPES, so it's a world set of experts that identified these changes in genetics as a potential role for and danger for pollinators. So yeah, so it's not only, let's say, something that is a problem here in Europe and that we raise concern. We often, it's a little bit, I have the same feeling as Eric, that as NGOs, we are always seen as being against innovation and technology. And yeah, I mean, and it's all the contrary. Actually, it is in GMOs that we have the largest amount of scientists and scientific and people coming from science and are very open to technology. But however, not all the technologies are there to be embraced. And I mean, it is extremely naive to think that all the technologies comes without risk. And sincerely, so far, what I heard are a lot of potentials and possibles, but really not the way we are going to deal with the, let's say, when the gun backfires. And eventually, the gun can backfire. And we have seen it already. We've seen it persistently. And it seems that we don't learn our lessons. And yeah, so for me, okay, we want to open the market in Europe, even if in Europe citizens are against it. Okay, but I think it merits a deep debate and actually not to leave the people who are against this completely abandoned. And I think this needs to be heard. I mean, the proposed legal framework, for me, it dismisses scientific evidence and it completely seeks to exempt these techniques from risk assessment, from traceability. We hear now that there is going to be monitoring. Fantastic. I really hope that the monitoring is publicly available and all the information is available to the public with a very, very big detail about where we can find these things. Because we as beekeepers, we absolutely know where exactly they are because our bees are going to be there, 100% sure. And this information, unfortunately, when we are discussing with member states, we never have access to this information because, of course, yeah, it's a GDPR and everything. And I'm sorry, but this is environmental information and the citizens absolutely need to have access to this because we can suffer consequences of this. So yeah, then it's a question for us that is very clear is afterwards, who is liable for the marketing of products if they would be adverse effects in this new proposal? If we cannot follow them, if we cannot trace where they are, if we find them into our honey, into our pollen, in you know, like, and we observe problems, who are we blame? Who can we go for to answer for you know? So if our bees get dead, I mean, we don't want to pass by the neonicotinoid again. It is, I mean, for me, this is a question that remains still open. So we will have over 90% of the new GMOs, let's say, with potentially evading risk assessment. So for me, this is an organized irresponsibility that is going to lead to irreparable damage. I mean, I really don't understand why institutions want to remove, as a citizen, for me, it is very hard to understand why institutions that are there to make sure that we citizens are safe, that they want to remove themselves tools to do it. I really don't understand it. Just say, okay, yeah, it's category 1, less than 20 nucleotides. I don't care. It is not a matter about quantity. It's a matter about quality. Just the change of one nucleotide can completely change the profile of a nectar, the form of the flower. I mean, these are a number of characteristics that so far not even included into breeding selection, into selection programs. And then, well, of course, we also, because our bees will move around a lot of pollen, for us, it remains very, very patent, let's say, well, very, very, yeah, patent, and we can say the problem of patents. What about if at one point our beekeepers get accused of having helped the distribution of genes in the environment? I mean, I know it sounds very crazy, but humanity is crazy. We observe it every day. So for me, this is again something that the legislation should actually target. Therefore, so we acknowledge the potential in genome editing, yeah, but we really need to give much more scientific evidence about the proclaimed benefits of this. And I mean, just I would like to say that we need to demand the innovations resulting from this breeding to be assessed based on criteria that demonstrates that they don't worsen the situation. So in this case, what we could use as criteria. One is that, that there is no promotion of biocide use by making plants more tolerant to biocides or pesticides. That we don't reduce the dependence of pollinators for fertility, because now what we are observing, look, a potential would be to use these NGTs to create super melliferous and polliniferous plants. Yeah, that would be, for instance, an objective. However, what we are observing is completely the opposite. We are observing that increasingly we have varieties that are self-pollinating. Why? So we can pass ourselves from pollinators, so we can use whatever pesticides, and then the people will not complain because, well, anyway, the pollinators were not there to pollinate. So yeah, so this, for instance, we cannot support this. We also would not support that there is no reduction, that there should be a reduction in the production of nutritional resources, for instance, the quality of nectar and pollen, and on the health of pollination, so the quality of this nectar and pollen. And the change of one nucleotide can change the composition of pollen and the composition of nectar. And nobody is including this into breeding selection programs. So no reduction, and we also observe like no reaction in the range of pollinators able to access the resources produced by the plant. So that whenever there is a breeding selection, actually, and then we include some changes in traits, that these traits do not change the forms of the flowers, because then it completely changes the range of pollinators that access these flowers. So, well, I think, okay, these criteria are maybe a little bit demanding, but that could provide an operational grid for breeders to actually register some varieties. But this is not there yet. So until this is not there, we are really, yeah, very, very aware. I mean, yeah, very hesitant to support this. So there is a scarcity of independent research. And they say, okay, the EFSA studies have shown that these show no problem. Well, okay, we work a lot with EFSA. You know how much we work with EFSA. And EFSA studies are not infallible. We have seen it with the neonicotinoids, and we will see it always. I mean, they are there with the knowledge that we have today. And then in the future, that can change. So, yeah. And I mean, and with this, I would like to finish, and I'm going to be a little bit provocative. Sorry. Today, so I heard that we have to believe in science. And because if we believe in science, of course, everybody should be pro NGTs and pro GMOs, because the science shows that there are plenty of, no, I agree, no, I mean, but this is what we have heard today. That because science have shown that these techniques open a lot of doors for research and for improvement in breeding, etc. But, well, I mean, I think there is a very, very big need now to respect the citizens' beliefs, morals, and ethical principles. And if people don't want that, because they don't want that, because they don't believe that this is the solution, it is something to be respected. And not because of, I mean, telling that they don't follow science is making it less important. Okay, so thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Noah. Voilà, c'est équilibré, hein. On voit bien que les avis divergent. Il est temps pour moi d'essayer d'animer un échange avec la salle, de prendre des questions, des remarques, des interventions soumises aux 6 personnes qui viennent de s'exprimer. Moi, je prendrai bien part au débat aussi parce que forcément le sujet m'interpelle. Donc, je vois 2 mains levées. Si ça vous ennuie pas, monsieur, je vais commencer par la dame et ensuite vous, monsieur. Je crois qu'il y a un micro là. Attends, regarde. Il y a un... Non, il marche pas. Ouais. Ah, c'est OK. La dame qui est là et ensuite... voilà.
Thank you. I introduce myself. My name is Astrid Österreich. I work for Test Biotech. I just have a short remark on monitoring, which was mentioned. It's impossible to monitor if you don't know what you're looking for. In category 1, there is no detection, no traceability foreseen. So how are you going to monitor if you're not even don't even know what you're looking for? It may be monitoring, but it's not scientific monitoring for sure. But I have a question as well. It's a question to Franziska Koller. There was also mentioned in the debate that these NGT1 crops are supposed to be similar to conventionally bred plants. And there are criteria in this proposal in the Annex 1, 20 genetic changes in up to 20 nucleotides, which supposedly show that those plants are really equivalent. Now, I would like to know, Franziska, you're a scientist. What is your analysis? Can these criteria really be used to establish equivalence with conventional breeding or not? I mean, we all agree if things are similar, they should be treated similar, but if they are not similar, they should be treated differently. So that's my question. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Je propose de prendre la deuxième question à suivre et ensuite je laisserai les uns et les autres répondre. Monsieur, oui. On peut donner le micro, monsieur? Pardon. Il est parti, la dame. Je vais prendre les deux premières questions qui se manifestent et ensuite on laissera les gens répondre, et Franziska en particulier, puisque c'est la première ciblée par la question. Allez-y, monsieur.
Yeah, I'm talking about from the position of a scientist studying pollinators. And I would like to support the position of BeeLife and of the organic farming organization, both because of the precautionary principle. But Noah said that if you follow science, you in favor of this new technique. I am a scientist and I am against, because science says also that the relationship between plants and pollinators is fruit of thousands of years of evolution, and plants elaborated techniques to attract pollinators to be pollinated, and they give them pollen and food substantially as a compensation, and it worked until humans started to breed new cultivars. And it's a question of the recent few decades that we have more and more situations that this doesn't work. For example, a very famous problem, at least in Italy, is some new cultivars of sunflower, where we can observe severe damages of both honeybee colonies and wild pollinators in the areas where these new cultivars are grown, because they contain barely proteic pollen, and the composition of amino acids in this pollen is not correct for the good development of pollinators. Normally, in a natural situation, a plant with this profile will die will not produce next generation. So this genetic line will be excluded from the evolution, but it's human activity that keeps it alive. And if it was even true what the companies are sustaining now, that this new technique is equivalent of the natural processes, natural breeding processes, natural-like breeding processes. At least we are speeding up this process of breeding, following our interests instead of the interests of the relationship between plants and pollinators. So we will surely have more problems with pollinators following the introduction of this technique. This is only a reflection.
Attendez, je vais distribuer la parole. Voilà.
But what you said, this variety is made by conventional breeding, but the ecological farming accept.
Yes. But this is what I am talking about. The human activity, the breeding, follows leads to these cultivars that are against natural mechanisms. With this new technique, we are speeding up this process.
That's
Attendez,
exactly.
je vais distribuer les paroles, si vous voulez bien, que je serve un peu à quelque chose, quand même si moi j'aurais beaucoup de choses à dire aussi, mais je vais me retenir. Je vais d'abord peut-être laisser la parole à Franziska, puisque c'est la première personne qui a été interpellée, et ensuite je vois bien qu'il y a des réactions, mais moi j'aurais des questions aussi à poser qui vont un peu dans le même sens. Franziska, est-ce que vous nous entendez toujours? Est-ce que vous pouvez tenter de répondre à la première question qui a été posée, et ensuite je laisserai la parole aux gens dans la salle. S'il vous plaît, pour que tout le monde puisse s'exprimer.
No, I'm not going to defend our proposal, Mr. Chairman, which of course we stand by our proposal. But just a few reactions to what the other panelists said, and also to the question. I fully agree with Eric, and the Commission fully agrees with Eric that NGTs are not the only solution that we need today for a more sustainable agriculture. We have also proposed to increase the surface in organic agriculture to 25%, as you know, Eric. And we have listened to the sector, as you explained yourself, that you said we don't want to use these in organic agriculture, even though individual farmers and individual associations from individual member states have come to see us to say the opposite. So we fully respect this view, and I agree with you that there are so many other things that need to be done in agriculture to make it more sustainable. Everything that you mentioned, fully agree. Noah, I'm sorry, the example that you said, the one nucleotide change that can change everything for pollinators can also happen in conventional breeding. And the question that was raised confirms that. So that is not something that is specific for NGTs. In conventional breeding, you have, as Mr. Olekas also said, you have the random mutagenesis, which can lead to all kinds of changes, uncontrolled, has done so for decades. And there is no risk assessment, there is no assessment prior or after or anything. So why would that be okay? And why is that okay in conventional breeding? And then when it's done with NGTs, it should be so different. EFSA has confirmed to us that there are modifications of NGTs that could also be generated either by crossing or by conventional methods such as random mutagenesis, but there are also more sophisticated ones. And for those we have proposed in category 2, the risk assessment and everything around it. So I think that example that you gave with the one nucleotide that can change so much, this can happen also spontaneously, even without any human interference. So again, we are aware that this could be, and that's why we have proposed the monitoring. And to respond to to Astrid and her question, the criteria for the monitoring and how exactly it's going to be done will be developed, because this is not going to happen next year, because next year there will be no NGT plants marketed yet. And I'm sure we will follow the same approach as now, with consultations on what are exactly the criteria and the elements that should be monitored when this exercise is going to be launched.
Merci beaucoup. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres personnes qui veulent réagir avant? Attendez, Moi, enfin, j'ai quand même des questions aussi. La position de la Commission, ça a été de préférer dire on évolue sur la réglementation sur les OGM plutôt que de se ranger derrière la position de la Cour de justice européenne du 25 juillet 2018. Comment? Ah oui, on est bien d'accord. Non, mais si, ça veut dire que parce qu'il y a eu ce rendu de la Cour de justice européenne, vous avez préféré, plutôt que de vous ranger derrière, modifier la réglementation. Oui, c'est quand même donc pas faire le choix de rester derrière la loi. Donc c'est bien la preuve qu'on a un sujet, parce que les scientifiques qui ont éclairé la Cour de justice européenne disent peu importe les conditions de mise, les méthodes de mise au point d'un OGM, c'est un organisme génétiquement modifié, donc ça reste un OGM. Et donc là, on est en train de modifier la règle pour que soient considérés OGM que les transgéniques et non plus les autres. Donc ça, c'est quand même une position très claire. Je veux finir. Après, moi, j'ai entendu plein d'arguments du style souveraineté alimentaire, on a besoin de travailler sous la souveraineté alimentaire. Est-ce qu'on ne va pas se tromper à travailler sous la souveraineté alimentaire avec des NGT si ça menace la survie des pollinisateurs? Moi, je pose la question, mais c'est la question que j'ai déjà posée tout à l'heure. Est-ce que de l'un ou l'autre, il n'y en a pas un qui est plus important dans la recherche de souveraineté alimentaire? Il a été question de résistance à la sécheresse, par exemple. C'est des jolies promesses, sauf que je vous informe, et c'est le paysan qui vous parle, que les paysans mettent en place des écotypes qui sont déjà résistants à la sécheresse et qui, demain, peuvent être pollués par des NGT qui font disparaître définitivement cette diversité, cette variabilité génétique, et c'est irréversible. C'est irréversible. Donc, essayez de vouloir avancer sur ce sujet-là alors que la solution existe déjà chez les paysans et la menacer, parce que ça menace cela au profit des grandes firmes semencières qui, eux, vont mettre au point les NGT, ça m'interroge. Et puis la dernière remarque, c'est pour être moi-même paysan et utiliser ces écotypes, pendant très longtemps d'ailleurs dans la plus grande illégalité, on a parlé tout à l'heure d'équilibre économique, de compétitivité, notamment mon collègue député européen. Alors, j'ai une information, c'est que ceux qui utilisent ces écotypes sont d'une performance économique à tout rompre. C'est-à-dire que s'il y a quelque chose qui est économiquement pertinent, qui est économiquement compétitif, c'est bien la solution qui consiste à ce que les paysans ressèment des grains qu'ils ont récoltés eux-mêmes et qui deviennent des écotypes parce qu'ils sont poussés sur le milieu sur lequel ils ont évolué. Et avec les NGT, vous menacez ça, vous menacez cet équilibre économique, vous menacez la ressource génétique qu'il y a autour de ces variétés locales et anciennes, et des solutions qui valablement s'attaquent frontalement au changement climatique. Donc voilà, c'est ça qui m'interpelle, et donc ça me renvoie sur la remarque de Eric. Est-ce que, quand on a tous ces éléments devant les yeux, est-ce que c'est pas urgent de convoquer le principe de précaution? C'est ça ma question. Est-ce qu'il n'est pas urgent de convoquer, avant toute chose, le principe de précaution? Des questions. Félix.
Wait, just quickly, and it's not a remark to the Commission only, because you are quite on the grill on it, but I think there is a collective responsibility of the European institution, because you said there is a various range of solution, and no one is saying NGT are the only solution. But at the end of this term, of this legislative term, what will be the legacy when it comes to the farm to fork and to the agricultural transition? We have a CAP that has been decided before even the farm to fork strategy was released. So, okay, DG Agri will probably disagree with me, but we have a lot of analysis saying that it's not on the right track to reach the objective of the Green Deal. The SURE just fell in the European Parliament last week. So the only piece of legislation coming from the Green Deal on agriculture will probably be the NGT one. And so collectively, the three institutions, the Commission, the Council, and the Parliament, I think there is an acknowledgement of the failure to make here, because we failed collectively to try to launch this agricultural transition, and the only thing that will stay is the NGT. So during a long time, the proponents of the NGT proposal said, if there is the SURE, we want the NGT. This was the deal, basically. And no, we don't. We will probably not have the SURE. We'll see. But we'll have the NGT. We'll have the NGT. So it's not really a question. It's just a remark on our collective failure, I would say, to deliver this.
C'est juste pour donner la parole. Qui d'autre avait levé la main, monsieur? Oui, il me semblait bien. Et après, je vous laisse vous exprimer. Allez-y, donnez la parole à monsieur, là. Et après, je verrai s'il y a d'autres noms, mais il faut laisser parler aussi les 6 personnes qui sont là autour de la table. Allez-y, monsieur.
Oui, merci. Je parle en anglais, pardon. So to get back to the statement of Noah about the nucleotides, I think the question is, what's the scientific background for the 20 nucleotides? Because, I mean, it doesn't matter how many these are. So this is what I don't understand. And the second question for me is, so will there be a legislation that's allowing me to sue another farmer or whoever when I get these mutations into my field? Will this be possible, and will it be easy? So because afterwards, maybe if there are several farmers around, you have to prove again who caused this. So these 2 questions.
Alors, qui veut réagir? Manifestez-vous. Oui, monsieur Berend.
Yes, and let me start with the last question. Liability is, and this is now maybe perceived as a cheap excuse, but it is the reality. It's purely the competence of the member states. So we cannot propose anything at European level on that. So it depends on the individual member states how they will regulate the question of liability. And the 20 nucleotides limit is indeed one that where we have received many comments saying there is no limit on what can happen naturally or by conventional breeding, and others saying 20 is too many or too much. It is based on an analysis of all the information we had on what is observed most frequently as a result of conventional breeding methods. And we have produced a paper to explain that, which the Presidency and the Council have made publicly available also. I don't know all the details because I'm not a technical expert in this area, but it's explained there how we have come to the 20. And we believe it is a very conservative, so a very precautionary approach, because it could be much higher. It could have been 50, it could have been another number. And to react to the comment from the gentleman there, I mean, the Commission at least has delivered with both proposals. How they end up now in the end is, of course, you're right, that's a collective task for Council and Parliament and us in the end in the legislative process to find compromises that are supported by both institutions. The Commission does not believe that the sewer is dead, as some say, and as some journals also wrote. It's now first and foremost in the hands of the Council to continue the first reading, and then it might come back to the Parliament for a new attempt. And we certainly, from the Commission's perspective, certainly hope so.
Eric, vas-y, prends le micro.
Yes, I think it's fine to have an open debate. Which technologies, which farming approaches are most suited for us to face the challenges that we're facing, and they are enormous. Collapse of biodiversity, dangerous out of control climate change as well. But let's not pretend that genetic engineering is not engineering to have this debate, you know? It's fine to discuss if risk assessment is appropriate or not, but gene editing and NGT1, it's not conventional breeding. I'm sorry to say, you know, it's modern genetic engineering, and it has nothing to do with the old mutagenesis by chemicals or irradiation. We already had this exchange, Mr. Olekas, which is, from a legal point of view, also considered genetic engineering since Directive 19220, but it was already exempted at the time because it had a long history of use. Okay, but this is genetic engineering, and the same word might be used, mutagenesis, but it has nothing to do. CRISPR-Cas9 has nothing to do with putting your seed into a bath of chemicals to create random mutation. And these techniques were used on all plants or on seeds. There was no intervention below the cell level as well. And so when the seeds was regrown, the mechanism of gene regulation were still functioning, whereas a technology like CRISPR-Cas9 goes much beyond and is much more powerful and can access regions of the genomes what cannot be accessed by others. So I think this comparison is not valid. Is not valid at all. We're talking about genetic engineering, and once again, like I always say, you know, the proof should be in the pudding. You know, we are not talking about banning NGTs in Europe. No, already they could be put on the market with the existing legal framework. Okay, we are talking about whether we should deregulate to make space for them. You know, some farmers will use them, and it's fine, and we will be able hopefully to compare based on proofs and you know what's existing. But we believe that we do not need to get rid of risk assessment and traceability to achieve that.
Merci Eric. Est-ce que quelqu'un d'autre veut prendre la parole? Je voulais, Sandrine, vous donner la parole parce que normalement, on a fini depuis un quart d'heure. Voilà, je suis désolé, monsieur Berend. Mais le débat est passionnant et si vous en convenez, enfin, si vous êtes d'accord, moi, je propose que Sandrine, qui représentait la jeune génération et qui s'inquiète pour son avenir, puisse terminer et conclure par son intervention.
Je peux poser une question ou je fais alors, c'est peut-être une question un peu naïve. C'est une question que je me posais. Donc, en fait, d'après les critères de la commission, on a donc 20 modifications qui sont autorisées. Seulement, dites-moi si je me trompe, le croisement de deux plantes NGT1, de catégorie 1, va donner une plante de NGT1 équivalente au conventionnel, si j'ai bien compris. Donc, ça veut dire que si on fait un croisement entre une plante qui a par exemple 20 modifications sur le chromosome 1 et une deuxième plante qui a 20 modifications sur le chromosome 2, la descendance peut avoir 40 modifications et on n'est plus du tout dans les critères que vous dites qui seraient équivalents. Et ça aurait été intéressant d'avoir la réponse à la première question pour savoir si la scientifique était déjà d'accord avec ces 20 modifications. Comment vous vous assurez du coup que pour les générations à venir, au fur et à mesure des croisements, on ne se retrouve pas avec une multiplication à chaque fois du nombre finalement de modifications?
Exactly. Every new variety that would have been bred in this way would be measured against the criteria. And if there are indeed 40 modifications, then it would no longer be in category 1 and it would be subject to the risk assessment under category 2.
So what is the point of the 20 modification? If with one generation you can multiply it by 2.
But that's another variety. That's another variety, a new variety to be brought to the market. It's a different plant variety.
So every time you really check.
That's the idea. Yes. Yeah.
Merci Sandrine. Du coup, c'était une question. Klaus a pu répondre. Merci. Merci Le débat est passionné hein, et le débat passionne et c'est passionnant. Hein. Voilà, j'espère qu'on trouvera l'équilibre pour justement, en référence à ce que nous disait Sandrine. Moi, j'ai beaucoup aimé le texte de Sandrine et son plaidoyer et j'espère qu'on sera à la hauteur de ce que réclament les générations futures dans l'atterrissage de cette loi. Et donc, merci de vos contributions les uns les autres. Merci Franziska. On n'a pas réussi à la faire intervenir une dernière fois. Merci à tous d'avoir participé à ces débats. J'espère qu'ils vous ont éclairé pour mieux comprendre ce qui est en train de se tramer. Pardon? Mais bien sûr, Félix. Voilà, ça sert à ça, un attaché parlementaire, mais je n'avais pas oublié. Et j'en profite pour remercier effectivement les interprètes, parce que quand on est au Parlement européen, à la Commission, ça y est, on a besoin des interprètes pour nous aider. Et donc, merci beaucoup de nous accompagner dans ces débats-là. Ce n'est pas toujours facile, parce que parfois, c'est très technique, comme le débat qu'on a eu aujourd'hui. Mais ils sont souvent opportuns dans leur traduction, et donc je les remercie très chaleureusement. Puis je remercie toute l'équipe de BeeLife qui nous a invités, qui organise cette semaine. Et il me reste à vous souhaiter une bonne Bee Week, c'est comme ça que vous l'avez appelé. Voilà, et donc merci d'être à l'origine de cette initiative et merci de nous y avoir invités et bonne vie aux abeilles, j'espère, bon avenir aux abeilles, j'espère que ce sera le cas et qu'on ne prendra pas des décisions désastreuses pour leur avenir.
Merci.